Hello, and welcome back to Politigood, shook people. I'm Rachel Parker.
And I'm Tim Fullerton.
Hey, Tim. How are you feeling liberated?
Oh, I feel so free. So free.
Finally, these markets, because they just were having such a bad time before.
Yeah. Who wants a retirement account anyways?
I know, right? Who cares about international law and normal trade practices? It's no big deal. So we were going to talk about the president's attack on higher education and the Department of Education. That was what we were going to talk about, because that's bad also. But then we got liberated from the shackles of free trade, and the stock market. I haven't checked today, but last time I checked, the markets had lost $7 trillion in global value.
Yep.
Which is unheard of. And so we decided that maybe we would make a pivot and talk about that today. What do you have to say, Tim? You go. I don't know what to say.
I mean, I think it is one of the biggest own goals in history, economically speaking. The only other one that I can think of that is remotely similar didn't happen in the United States, which is Brexit, which is a similar idea, where the United Kingdom decided to not be part of the EU anymore. And they did that about 10 years ago, now, 9 years ago now. And
it was simultaneous with Trump's rise to presidency.
Yeah, it was about this. I think it was a few months before. Yeah, it was just a few months before.
Yeah.
So 9 years. And 9 years later, their economy is still a disaster because they got rid of all of these trade laws with the European Union, which was beneficial to them. And now they are not part of that. So if they go down by themselves. They don't have anybody to buoy them. We're doing the same thing here with these tariffs, where we're basically saying we're going to make everything more expensive to, I guess, theoretically renegotiate trade deals based on a trade deficit that doesn't actually affect our economy, because just because we buy more things from somebody else doesn't mean that there's a deficit. It just means that we buy more. Right. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual health of the economy. So
for a little quick, we're not supply chain people. We could probably talk to people who work in supply chains, and I think Tim and I are, reasonably informed enough about business that we could maintain that discussion. But, we did not have the resources or time to get such a person on the podcast today. But let's just say that, let's talk about, I've been talking to people about black pepper online on the internet. I've been saying black pepper a lot. And the reason I say black pepper is because it's hard to imagine cooking or doing anything in your life without black pepper. It is one of the, and also salt, by the way. Those two ingredients are amongst the most common items that you will find in any household, not just here, but everywhere. Imagine watching Top Chef if those people did not have salt and pepper, right? Those are not things that are found in the United States typically. Pepper comes from a tropical environment. So we get most of our pepper from India, a country that that Trump is punishing with trade tariffs. There may be, let's say that we just take that as an example alone. Let's just say that we buy more pepper from India than India buys something from the United. Who cares? Right. It doesn't grow here. What difference does it make? And so I think and I'll throw this back to you after I say this, that one of the interviews that I've appreciated from the last few days, and this is the tone that I hope that we can strike here, are the ones where no one tries to rationalize what Trump is doing behind the lens of what is this about? What's he really? The conversations that I've appreciated are the ones that say he's a mad king. That's Bill Cohen yesterday or 2 days ago, this is all blurring together. This is informed by a terrible idea he had about tariffs back in the 80s. And he has this notion that if he increases the cost of goods on individual Americans, that will increase revenue. That's not how it works, by the way. And that revenue will justify the sweeping tax cuts that he wants to pass in his big, beautiful bill, right? So that is what is actually happening. So I'm not interested in the conversations that I've seen where it's like they're trying to still look at Trump like he's like a normal person and that there's some grand master plan. He's lost the plot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he doesn't have anyone in his cabinet in either Treasury or any of his advisors to say, like, dude, if you keep this up, not only are we going to cause a recession, we're going to crash the dollar and you're going to push us into a depression, right?
There's almost nothing that is made in this country that won't be affected by tariffs. And we've seen some people on the right, Charlie Kirk, who's a known liar, saying, well, if you make all your products in the United States, you won't be affected by tariffs. And it's like, well, that's actually not true, because what equipment are you buying to make those products? Someone was mentioning farming. Well, where are those hoses coming from? Where the tractor, some of the equipment, heavy duty equipment, some of it's made here, but even the ones that are made here, parts are made other places that are brought in. So literally, I guess if you were like an organic farmer and you didn't have anything, and I guess you did everything by hand and you like literally had a pool to catch rainwater, I suppose that could probably be tariff free, but there isn't anything, anything that is even the US made stuff, homes, like steel and lumber predominantly come from Canada and China. Right. So there's just nothing. So, we just started this, I guess, last week. Prices are going to start to skyrocket. JP Morgan has already revised their Q2 growth from 1.3% GDP to negative 0.3%.
The word for that is stagflation, by the way, which always drive costs up. So
the stagflation is the really scary thing here, because that's where interest rates stay high and also goods stay high. So then nothing happens. And we are sort of pushing ourselves into that reality right now. And that's why you don't really see there are no economic experts outside of partisan hacks that say this is a good idea economically. It's just not a thing.
And like all these people that are on like what remains of X are not economists, right? The economists that I follow, there's a bunch of people here that are, like really smart urban planning type people and really smart economists that I follow on LinkedIn. And like they describe a scenario where if this stays this way, the US can't borrow against itself anymore, because nobody's going to buy T-bills. And that's how our economic system works. So you either have to, in this environment, if what you want to do is isolate yourself completely from the international economy, from if you don't want anybody buying goods from America, which is what we're facing right now, you don't want anybody buying goods from America. That means that we'd have to raise taxes tremendously, not just on, so the tariffs are an inadvertent tax. Right. They're not. So the people who collect that money are the people that are directly involved in the supply chain of goods. It's not like it's going to go back to the federal government and then be shared directly with the people of this country. The way for people who are listening to him is shaking his head like, no, it will not. So if you want to compensate for becoming a pure play isolationist country, unless you want to turn into post-Soviet Russia, which I think we can all agree is a terrible idea. For all the people that do this, like, oh, Putin is buying Trump, Russia has a very small economy, right? Like, it's really small. They're extremely internationally isolated, and nothing. And so some of that isolation does cause some internal innovation in terms of using more local things and stuff like that. But eventually it starts to really creep into your ability to grow your economy. The way to grow your economy in that kind of scenario is to say, well, we have a lot of billionaires, we have a lot of oligarchs, and pony up, and we're going to take a 50% tax on all of your inherited wealth. We're going to tax all of your gains more than we do now. And we're going to, if interest rates stay as high as they're going to, it affects their ability to borrow against their also like what are you going to borrow against if your stock is worthless? So like I'm not a big fan of the Wall Street economy. I would like to see it be more egalitarian. Like, I'm a Bernie-crat basically, but like you cannot force people to reshore all manufacturing in the short term by punishing consumers. That's just a crazy pants plan.
His theory is flawed in that what he is saying to people is that we're going to raise the cost of goods coming in so high that we're going to, it basically, like you said, reshore them here. But that just guarantees that prices stay high forever, because the reason that we import goods from other countries is because, one, either we don't have the resources, or two, it's cheaper. So you bring everything here, which, first of all, to build this manufacturing capacity, they said it would take 4 to 5 years for each facility to be built. But those materials to build those facilities are also from overseas. So that increases the cost of manufacturing or building a facility here. And then, and this would be the good part of it. You hire American workers, but American workers make infinitely more than, say, Chinese workers, which means then the cost of goods, even if you were to bring all of this to the United States, which is virtually impossible, you keep goods at the tariff price, maybe even higher, because of the cost to do business here. This is why free trade came up in the first place. And, I think that I'm all for protections and making sure that we aren't buying goods from people doing bad things to people and things like that. But Trump's plan doesn't have prices coming down. And that is what he promised to the American public. And I do think that we are starting to see maybe some cracks in the base, because people are looking at retirements.
Right.
I on the other podcast that I do, the Find Out podcast, one of the guys said on Friday he lost 30 grand on Friday. You know, and he started investing in all the this whole thing, but 30 grand just evaporated overnight.
Right. So if you hold So most people hold index funds, right? Most 401ks are very heavy in index funds. So if you're heavy in index funds, even the whatchamacallit, the tech stocks, whatever that acronym is that I just forgot, there's no safe place for you right now unless you're Warren Buffett and you were like, I'm getting out. Which he did right before, right? Right, because he knew, because Warren Buffett has the liquidity and the ability to just kind of suddenly go, well, I'm gonna own the dollar. And smart man that he is. But I'm going to go back to a point that you made and say, even if you think that this is an idea that will help bring labor supply back to the United States, the flawed logic in that is that it will take closer to 10 years. You're a decade out from all of this manufacturing getting reshored. We do not have the labor. A lot of stuff still gets made in the United States. Most of the stuff that we use is actually made in the United States. We do not have the labor supply. So if you suddenly decide to flip a switch, instead of doing more what Biden had in mind, which is that you kind of have a slow trickle, you pass the CHIPS Act, you continue to you attract business by incentivizing them instead of punishing them. Always better to use a carrot than a stick with business people, by the way. Mm-hmm. The only way that you're going to get to the adequate labor supply is by doing what, Tim? What do you have to do in order to get the labor supply that you need for every single piece of everything to be made in the United States?
Do you mean have a pathway to citizenship and not kick people out of the country?
I think what I'm saying is you need immigration. So there's... And also, let's just say, okay, so we do that. So we increase the population of the United States such that there is enough mid-skilled workers to staff and AI is not, these people that are like, oh, AI is going to... AI is glorified search engines right now. We're a decade off at a minimum, I think, from having the robust enough supply chain of the kinds of data centers that you need for the kind of AI that everybody fantasizes is going to somehow make everything. Whatever. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I'm still kind of doing my own reading on that. Whatever. So the ingredients that go into everything, right? Let's go back to my pepper analogy. Everything has pepper in it, right? So if you're going to make food, let's say that everything that's made in a frozen dinner, probably all that stuff is made in the United States. The ingredients don't all come from here. Like you're not just buying seasonally anymore. You're buying ingredients from Costa Rica. You're buying ingredients from Asia. You're buying ingredients from the things that go into the plastics, the dyes, all the stuff that makes a car. Mm-hmm. Those things are not just produced in the United States. All of this is but it goes back to the idea that there is any logic that is fueling his delusional idea that dates back to the 19th century about how to fuel a growing economy, right? Like, and
well,
go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, like, I think we've done this 3 times in history, and each time it's failed. And also, they are completely different. I mean, the last time I think was in the 1920s or 30s during the Depression. It didn't work. Also, very hard to compare something in 2025 to then. But even if you were to just have the tariffs, let's just say that, like, that would be damaging enough. But then we are also doing 2 other things that are damaging. One is obviously these horrific ICE raids where they're even arresting people with no evidence, frankly, by mistake in some instances. There's one guy that got deported to that horrendous El Salvadorian prison, and now the U.S. government is fighting having to go bring him back, even though they accidentally did it. Those workers, those 15 million or so undocumented workers, are now being deported. And we have places like Florida that is now trying to replace immigrant labor with child labor. This is actually a thing they're trying to do, which is weaken the laws for children to work. And I'm not talking not necessarily just 16 and 17-year-olds. It goes even down to 14-year-olds. The other thing that we are doing that is incredibly damaging, which I don't think a lot of people think about, is just the fact that we have been demonizing people from, to use a main term, from away. But in this case, I'm talking internationally. They're not coming here. Like, we are not there. There was a chart that I just saw recently of the drop in international visitors in Q1, and it is a horrible and very concerning stat. And why is that important? Because the U.S. economy relies on a lot of international visitors to come to places like national parks. Like, we talked to John Jarvis, we spend $3 billion a year to fund national parks, and they return about between $30 and $35 billion to the economy. Huge ROI on that. A lot of that's international visitors, many in particular from Asia, especially on the West Coast. None of them are coming. That's the best money that we can put into the economy because it's coming from other places. It's not just being recycled within the United States. That's dropping at the same time. So we're kicking out immigrants. People are not coming here for trips and vacations and things like that. And we are also putting 30 some odd % tariffs on almost every single good that comes in the United States, except for Russia. Russia got an exemption. Ukraine didn't, but Russia got an exemption from this because they said they were negotiating the war to end, which I think that Zelensky would.
And what the hell do we get from Russia? We don't get anything from Russia. Are you kidding?
We apparently have a trade deficit. I guess that we import a few $1 billion a year of goods. So like I only pointed, it's not a big trading partner, but it didn't make their logic didn't make any sense.
Our biggest trading partners by a mile are Mexico and Canada. Like, it's not even close. Yeah. Like, by a mile. Yeah. Like, and he already, by the way, like, and you're right, and there's one other thing I want to add to that, but like, I want to remind everybody that he did renegotiate NAFTA in his first term, his first presidency. Trump 1.0 renegotiated NAFTA. He made a big ballyhoo about it, and it was sort of useless. It didn't really do anything. It didn't really, like, he promised he was going to, like, do it. But, like, I will say, I'm not going to give him credit because, like, a broken clock is right twice a day, etc. But, like, he did get people like Joe Biden. There was a wide enough crack in the door that somebody who, like Joe Biden, whatever you think about him, Taylor Lawrence, if you kick the door open a little bit, somebody like him has a little bit more space to start to try and erode the impact of neoliberalism across the last 50 years, right? So that did give some notion that we can explore the policies of sort of like the progressive left or whatever. Fine, great, done. This is not that. And in addition, I want to add something to what you said, which is the other ingredient that we have to include is the amount of federal workers that Donald Trump and his idiots at Doge have laid off. So you've created you're doing everything you can to create a recessionary environment. The biggest employer by far in the United States until Donald Trump took office, I don't know if this is still true, it probably is, was the federal government.
Yep.
So he's laid off millions of people. There's been an article, if you live in any local, read your local paper. Read about the amount of people in your state who work for the federal government who don't know where they're going to get, who don't know where their next paycheck is going to come from, right?
Well, and a lot of those jobs in particular rural areas are well-paying jobs that do not have a replacement. And I think the thing that's frustrating about the federal government cuts is that there's been a lot of research that's been done on this, and what they're cutting isn't necessarily saving any money because there are effects on the other end that mean less revenue coming in. Like the thing we talked about with Jarvis in the park service. Like, you cut enough park rangers at national parks, and then all of a sudden there's trash everywhere, or like trails aren't being repaired. People stop coming, which means they stop paying the fees to come in. And you can't cut the sort of discretionary budget of the United States enough to affect the deficit if you're not going to touch, the three things that if you touch them, you'll get basically electrocuted, which is the defense budget, which is way too big. And then the Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, which are not big enough, in my opinion. So like you can't cut your way out of this. And it's just causing so many things to fail. I mean, one of the great examples that someone was telling me the other day that works at one of the at the big banks here was that, this money that they're cutting to universities. So people are, they're just subsidizing universities. Like, well, no, they're subsidizing a lot of the faculty's research. And what do faculty do when they get money for research? They hire assistants who happen to be usually undergrads or graduate students. So we have one of the best training programs in the world for tech workers at our universities, which is partially funded from the government. And they just ripped all of that money, hundreds of millions of dollars per some universities, out, which means then less students are going to get that type of high skilled experience, which means they're not going to be able to bring that into the workforce either. So all of this is just not helping anybody. We're not saving any money, and we're just shooting ourselves in the foot for whatever reason that he has deemed why we're doing this.
And I always think about, like, everything is an ecosystem, right? Every financial system, every trade system is an ecosystem. And if you're going to change an ecosystem, you have to do it very carefully and mindfully and thoughtfully, because if you just yank everything at once, the system can collapse, right? It doesn't matter what it is. So there was an article in the Kansas City Star, which is the best paper, one of the best papers in the Midwest, as far as I'm concerned. There's also really good work that the Des Moines Register has been doing about the not just the federal workers themselves who are losing their jobs, but like the restaurants, the basically like the service industry that surrounds these big federal buildings, dry cleaners, like the services that these people use every day. Are really terrified. They've already seen their business drop because all these discretionary workers were fired. But I want to make a quick and awkward pivot because I want to talk a little bit about, I think this is really interesting. This just dropped yesterday in The Guardian. So the framework under which Trump is using to claim that he has the legal right, which he does not. We should also say that Trump is not bending the law to his whim so that he can declare a state of emergency to pass these tariffs without Congress. So he's using something called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. I'm reading. This is an announcement from Donald Trump's White House, okay? To address the national emergency posed by the large and persistent trade deficit that is driven by the absence of reciprocity in our trade relationships and other harmful policies like currency manipulation and exorbitant value-added taxes, VAT, perpetuated by other countries. All right? Okay. That's what he's doing. That is bullshit. That is such a load of nonsense. So I read this to Tim this morning, and the look on his face was kind of priceless. You're never going to believe you're literally never going to be able to guess who is suing the Trump administration over this state of emergency. Are y'all ready? Leonard Leo and Charles Koch. Now, if you told me that I was going to live in a world where Leonard Leo, who is one of the most influential religious conservatives in the United States, he helped Donald Trump pick his Supreme Court justices, and Charles Koch are funding the new Civil Liberties Alliance, which is filing suit against the Trump administration's logic of using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. We officially live in the upside down. That's it. When you see Charles Koch and former vice presidential nominee Tim Kaine agreeing with each other that no president, and to be fair, Tim Kaine and some of this is there's bipartisan legislation now in the Senate to be like, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think you need legislation. I think you just need to enforce the existing laws correctly. Like a lot of the things that Joe Biden did to for student loan relief and stuff, that was illegal, basically. Like he was doing everything he could to sort of use the framework of existing legislation to say like this is an emergency. He basically said the same thing for students, and the Supreme Court was like, no, bro, it isn't. And they were right. They were kind of correct. Like, yeah. So I think that the problem is that there is no Justice Department. But I am curious to see what happens when Donald Trump's Justice Department, which has not exactly, let's say, exemplified themselves in these various hearings that they've had where they just sound like their pants are down. I don't know that I want to see them fight against the Koch funded network of libertarian money anymore. I think that's going to be embarrassing. But what's problematic about that is that those are the people that know how to surgically pick the courtrooms where they want to fight this stuff. And so we could end up seeing something worse on the other side of these. Like if there's going to be more lawsuits for more far right groups, they're going to go jurisdiction shopping, and that never works out well for the American people. I don't even know what else to say. Yeah. I'm out of words.
I mean, I think that, and I think all of these guys really didn't think he was going to do the tariff thing. They wanted the tax cuts, right? All these guys who have more money than God wanted more. And I think that they are now having a bit of shopper's remorse because they may get their tax cut, but they're also going to get kicked in the teeth on all of the businesses that they're running because he's tanking the economy. So we are starting to see some people like, well, I can't say the Koch brothers because there's only one Koch brother left, but
Chucky Koch.
Charles, yeah, who's done enormous damage to this country, but that's for another day.
And Leonard Leo, we cannot overstate what a venal piece of shit that guy is.
Yeah. I don't really like being on the side where we all agree. And then there was the billionaire, what's his face, that went after Harvard. I can't remember his name, but now all of a sudden it's like I was wrong about Donald Trump. And what you're seeing is that I think what they are really inside feel like, which they don't like him, but they were going along with the tax cuts. And now they're responsible for all this other stuff. And, that legislation that you mentioned in Congress, there are 6 or 7, at least, Republican senators that are on that. And I think they realize that the tariffs are death to them for the midterms. Death. Like we have seen, the special elections that happened in Florida, Democrats didn't win, but they went from losing by 30 plus points to losing by 10.
How expensive was it for Elon Musk to lose in Wisconsin?
Was he spent $20 million, $25 million, something like that?
The estimates are that it's at least 20, as much as 25 million.
Yeah.
What a discrepancy. Just $5 million discrepancy.
I know. Well, for
whatever.
A guy who's worth $350 billion, it's literally just like what
not right
what
now,
he makes
he's
on
not.
interest. No, that's true. He has lost a bunch. And also, well, I mean, we've seen Elon going after the folks, the economic advisors in the White House about tariffs because he lost like $16 billion last week. And I think, again, it's another one of those, whoops, what did I do things? But yeah, Elon spent $25 million trying to flip a Wisconsin Supreme Court seat, and he lost by 10 points. Donald Trump won Wisconsin 5 months ago. And this race was 10
by
points.
By way less than 10 points, by the way. It was a
narrow
narrow victory.
1.5 points or something.
It was a very narrow victory.
Something like that. Again, the what we're seeing is the Ben Wickler work in Wisconsin, which I have nothing against Ken Martin, but I wish that he had been picked as DNC chair. But again, we saw the power of what you can do when you organize people and fight back. I think these tariffs are going to, those seats in Florida were plus Republicans plus 30, which means there's, I think, it's like 30% more Republicans than Democrats in a district. And we lost by 10 points. So that's still a big loss. But now imagine the Republican 15 seats all of a sudden are in play because we shaved 20 points off that victory in 5 months. If these tariffs stay and these prices go up and we hit stagflation, which also means interest rates stay up, they are looking at a complete and utter wipeout in 2026. There is no if, ands, or buts about it. They control all of the levers of government. Democrats are finally getting their voice and standing up and saying no, but like using procedural moves, which slow things down. They don't stop them. But I think there are senators that are up in 2026 who probably felt fairly safe, who are now looking at this and going, I don't know if this is so safe anymore, because it's so obviously Donald Trump's fault, because he literally said he was going to do it. There's no ambiguity here. Right. And I think they're terrified.
Right. And to be clear, like, Donald Trump he didn't drop this out of nowhere.
No.
He has been saying this is exactly what he was going to do, you know, and his advisors who just want to destroy the federal government. This was part of Project 2025. This was a blueprint for his administration. It was, so the idea that you're shocked that he actually sorry, I was just going to say really quickly, Donald Trump pretty much is as baffling as his behavior is, as old and wheezy as he sounds these days. As much as he has had a lack of legislative success overall in his presidency, he basically almost always tries to do what he says he's going to do. He's not always successful, but he's sincere, whether or not you think he's crazy. So I don't know why these people decided that they thought that they could control him. And before you say what you were going to say, I want to ask you a question too, because I think this is really important. So there's been a narrative that disturbs me quite a bit, and it was because I think it was born from the obstructionism that President Obama faced, and the obstructionism that Bill Clinton faced, and the obstructionism that Joe Biden faced. And the narrative went like this: the president doesn't really have any power anymore. I've heard people say that on like various political science, people on the kind of left-leaning podcast, and I was like, are you out of your mind? Yeah, but that was a narrative, because it is very difficult when you are the president that is facing the opposition party in a Senate where we still have a filibuster. It is difficult to get your agenda across. This, however, and this is where I'll throw it to you, and then I want to know what you were going to say before. I think we can just say, this is a reminder, the president of the United States wields tremendous power, enormous power.
I don't know why anybody thinks that. And I would actually argue, if you're going to make a case for who has less power now than 10, 20, 30 years ago, it's Congress. The fact that they haven't said anything about these tariffs, which it's definitely not within his power to do this, or ignoring court rulings, which are supposed to be a red line. But I also, this is where I'm going to give Joe Biden credit, and I'm going to slice off the last year of the term for lots of reasons. But before that, he actually did pass a lot of stuff, and he got a lot of things through. Like you mentioned the CHIPS Act earlier. I mean, in using incentives rather than sticks to bring manufacturing back here. I mean, there were stories of plants in Europe shutting down and reopening in the United States because of the CHIPS Act. That's how you get more jobs back here. And what I was going to say before was, I remembered the billionaire who was like, I had no idea. It's Bill Ackman. So Bill Ackman used to be
he's
sort
in
of
this Guardian story,
on the left, kind of in a neoliberal way, and has made the move all the way to
totally
Trump.
red-pilled.
Totally red-pilled. And, he came out this week and said, I was totally wrong about Trump. And I wish I could just ask him the question, because I'm like, were you just fooling yourself that he wasn't going to do these things? Or are you an idiot? Because he said he was going to do this. And so, like, it should not shock anybody. It shouldn't shock Elon Musk, Bill Ackman, you and I. Like, he said he was going to do this. Well, there's another one. Like,
Peter Thiel, whatever. Yeah.
They all got red pilled, and they all got like sold a bill of goods that, like, we're going to cut your taxes. You're going to be able to do all this stuff, yada, yada. Didn't realize that, like, that was actually going to bring down the economy at the same time. So I do think that's a long way of saying we're seeing cracks in the group. It's not the 30% or 35% that will love Trump no matter what he does. But that 10, 15 in the middle, I think there are opportunities there to exploit the fact that they have literally torpedoed the economy. There was an Economist piece, I think it was in December, that was literally said that the United States economy was the envy of the world.
Right.
And now, like,
we're a pariah.
They wiped out $7 trillion in worth in a day.
In a day.
They've dug some of that back, I think, today, but not much. We're definitely in the negative. So, like, to go from 5 months ago, which, by the way, is Joe Biden's economy, not Donald Trump's, to this, it is very stark. And I think it is so stark that it's hard for Americans who really don't pay much attention.
Right.
I think they're going to get this one.
Right. Well, so, if only there had been a woman of color who was running for president who throughout her very short, but pretty spectacular, I think, campaign said over and over and over again, this is going to happen, 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 this is going to happen. And if Kamala Harris, if you're listening to this, you're not, but let's just say she is, I think you can go on a tour, just call it I told you so. It's fine with me. Go ahead, go nuts, knock yourself out, because she did. Anyway,
Hillary was right too, by the way. The two women who lost.
The two women who lost were both right. So I'm going to throw something back to you, because I really want to hear what you have to say about genuinely. And I for the folks listening, I do not know what Tim's going to say. So the midterms are not tomorrow. The midterms are 20-ish months away. We are still in Trump's first 100 days, which is mind-boggling to me. This is what he's wasting his goodwill on. So the first 100 days is like, that's when the president basically can set an agenda. And he still has the goodwill, the wind's at his back, blah, blah, blah. And Trump is squandering it, in my opinion, on something that he didn't have to do. Like you said, this is one of the greatest self-owns in the history of the U.S. presidency. I've heard, again, like business reporters who I really respect. I don't agree with them all the time, but I respect their knowledge about the economy and Wall Street. They're all just like, not Trumpers, by the way. These people that think he's nuts. So I want to throw it back to you with a frame that in this interim that we have between now and the midterms, there is now officially, I don't think that we have blood in the water. I think that the shark attack happened. I think there's a legless post-Jaws attack person floundering around, on a surfboard somewhere. And like you said, everyone can see it. We had this really spectacular day of national protest on Saturday. I was unable to attend any of them. I think people know by now that I'm a caregiver, and so I don't have that kind of availability right now. But anyway, so we're seeing that there has been this, and I think the success of your Sister Wife podcast, the Find Out, is showing this too, that there is a lot of interest in getting involved. What do you think people should do right now, in between now and the midterms, to keep the momentum, to keep the pressure up? Because for people that are for Republican lawmakers who do not like Trump, and most of them don't. I mean, there's Jim Jordan. And
most hate him.
Most of them really can't stand him. But Mitch McConnell is not really a leader of anything else besides wealth. And he's too old now to be able to really amass any sort of tremendous amount of leverage against Trump. And he's also no longer the majority leader, by the way. So in the interim, what can we do to give space for the Republicans who I cannot stand, these like post-Trump, post-policy obstructionist Republicans, and also like what can we do as voters and as concerned citizens, do you think, to keep the pressure up so that we can not just stop the economic disaster that is Donald Trump, but also the social and social justice disaster that is Donald Trump?
I think there are a few things. One is we need more people to continue to speak up, and I'll give you a small example of this, right? Like my personal Facebook page has sort of been a lightning rod over the years because I grew up in a place in Maine that was pretty evenly split between Republicans and Democrats. So I get a lot of people on the right coming towards me, and most people who agreed with me generally stayed out of it, just not deal with it. I'm seeing a big shift in that, and I'm seeing people speak up like they never have before. And I think the person who speaks up for the first time is going to have a lot more impact than me speaking up for the 50 millionth time, right? Like, so I think if people are able to raise your voice, don't have to get into arguments with people, but just show your displeasure with what is going on here. I think that is huge. And I think people don't realize how powerful their voice is. But everyone here, everyone listening, everyone on earth has somebody they can influence. That is power, and you should use it. Another thing, which is going to be for a smaller set of people, is that people need to think about running for office. Any office, city council, school board, like volunteer boards. Because Republicans, this is something Democrats have not done well, and they were finally waking up to it. Republicans have spent years funding school board candidates and city council candidates because it's a feeder system for what I'll call the big leagues, which is the national elections, right?
And state legislatures.
It's state legislature. So it's in state legislature. Like in Maine, it's a part-time position that pays $25,000 a year. So it limits who can actually do it. But anybody can do that job. Anybody. And there is an organization that I am a big fan of called Run for Something that helps progressives. This is not a bipartisan thing. This is straight for us, progressives, to run for office, because the more people that we have run, the wider the pool. There's also a trickle up effect. I think I'm using the wrong term that Amanda Littman, who is the executive director of Run for Something, says.
She's awesome. I love her.
She's so great. And everybody, if you have spare money, please go donate to them at runforsomething.net is their URL. But think of it as like baseball, right? Baseball has the major leagues, and then there's a farm system below it, right? And it goes from single A, which is the most junior. I'm for any baseball enthusiast, I'm skipping over a few pieces, but from single A to triple A, which are the most experienced people. Same for politics. You don't need to know anything to be on a school board. Like, you should learn and, all that, but like, there's no special skill, and other than just caring. And the more people we do that, the more Democrats that we train. Let's say, somebody only is going to come out to vote for you, and then they happen to be in the booth, and the D above you and the D above you there, they may just tick all of those boxes. So I think thinking about running now, also, we like I said, we made huge gains in seats that were plus 30 Republicans. We won a state house seat in Pennsylvania. The Democrats, this was a few weeks ago, Democrats haven't won in 150 years. We won that seat. But we have to have candidates running in these places. It also makes it harder for Republicans to defend. They've got to spend more money. So I think a mixture of voice and thinking about putting your hat in the ring for anything, it can have a huge impact. And people feel it's an intimidating thing, but like, most people don't even know who their members are. Like but you can still run, So I think those are big things. And then obviously giving money to candidates right, that you really care about and support, no matter where they are, is really important as well.
And I'm gonna throw in one other request, if I may, on top of that. I think that's all very true and very excellent. Something to think about. The other thing that I would say is, and this is something when people love to talk to me about politics for all the obvious reasons, and I think people love to challenge me a lot. I think you Tim, and probably folks listening to this can understand that. Like, when you're the friend that follows politics and talks about it a lot, people come to you with their ideas. What about this? And you're like, I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm at dinner. Yeah. What I say to those people, and this is always really an interesting conversation, is I'll just say, stop. Who did you vote for in the last congressional midterm cycle? I want you to go down the list. Who did you vote for House? Who did you vote for local? Who did you vote for? Who represents you in the state capitol right now? The two people you have to, Missouri, like in Missouri, I'd be like, we have a Senate and we have a House. Yep. Who represents you both? Who represents you on the city in your city council? Who represents you on your county council? Who represent, like, if the people that you're talking to, so that is your homework. If you don't know those names, and in most states, those people are legally obligated to have coffee with you. So in Missouri, your state senator and your local House rep who represents you in Jefferson City, our capital, they are legally obligated to meet with you individually. So even if it's a Trumper, they have to, right? So that's not something that everybody's going to do well. It's going to be a frustrating experience, but at least know their names. Learn their names. Memorize them, so that you are very intimately aware of every single person who sits between you and all of the seats of power, because those people have tremendous leverage over the way that you live your lives, right? That's my homework for
Yes. Oh, a more informed citizenry will always be better. So
for sure.
I agree.
All right. Well, we'll catch you guys on the flip, and I want to thank Tim again for and again, like, I haven't had a chance to really say this yet. Maybe I have. I don't remember. No, I think I have. Just to find out, man. I'm so happy for you. No, seriously, like, there's been, because the reason that I got into podcasting was to kind of help sort of influence what you guys are trying to do, which is to bring people that feel alienated and they want to listen to people that sound a little bit more like us, that are a little more plain spoken, but also have the knowledge base. So to know that there's an appetite for that, and the work that you guys are doing to show that there is a real curiosity and a real passion for people who feel like, well, the only people that look like me vote for Donald Trump, and I don't know what to do because there's this gulf. For low information voters feel very alienated. So again, thank you so much. I'm so excited for you guys.
Oh, for sure. And it's been really wild and exciting, because I think it shows a path forward, I think, to bringing more men back into the Democratic Party. And it feels weird to say representation matters for white men, as literally like the most privileged group in the United States. But people need to see people who look like them in order to imagine themselves in that same space. It's just human nature. It's like that for everywhere.
Right.
And so we are trying to be that for that group. And I think we have seen tremendous appetite for it. So I think everybody should go find a group that Democrats have problems with and try to work with them, because we're going to need it all hands on deck in 2026, and then all hands on deck again 2 years later.
All hands. This is an all hands. So, all right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
Today's episode was produced by Rachel Parker and Tim Fullerton. Audio, music, and engineering by Chris Lombardo. Our assistant producer is Lizette Nolasco. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts and watch entire episodes on our YouTube channel. Sign up for premium content and more at politigoodpod.com or email us at hello@politigoodpod.com.